Hello, and thank you for joining us for our session on trending issue, enabled medical devices, tailoring a regulatory framework to encourage responsible innovation in artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'm Ed Hickey, Vice President of AAKP, Chair of AAKP's Veterans Health Initiative, a caregiver, and a fellow kidney patient. As technology and innovation advances, patient consumers and medical professionals will see the expansion of AI-powered tools and machine learning tools in care plans to support decision-making, diagnostics, and to potentially improve care outcomes. But with this new technology comes many questions. Patient consumers need to know how AI and machine learning technology and related devices will be regulated, how large volumes of data will be used in their care, whether or not AI and machine learning data will be a substitute for the decision and accountability of a medical professional, and how these technologies could potentially exacerbate bias in healthcare decisions. These are complicated issues. And for the past several years, AAKP has been active in making certain these issues are brought out in the open for public discussion. AAKP's Chair of Policy, Paul Conway, serves as chair of the FDA's Patient Engagement Advisory Committee, and for the last year, this issue was the primary focus of the committee's public deliberations. I would encourage everyone watching to go to the FDA website and look for the transcript and summary of that meeting. AAKP believes every stakeholder in the process needs to demand transparency on how these technologies will be used in key decisions where the patient is not at the table, especially within the healthcare systems and hospitals. Patients should expect clear answers from medical professionals when AI is being used in their healthcare plan. Joining us today, we are very honored to have Dr. Matthew Diamond, Chief Medical Officer for Digital Health at the Digital Health Center of Excellence for the Center for Devices and Radiological Health in the Office of Strategic Partnerships and Technology Innovation for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Dr. Diamond will speak to the FDA's Center for Devices and Radiological Health lifecycle-based regulatory framework for these technologies. Dr. Diamond, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here at this AAKP event. Thanks for the opportunity to present. I'm Matthew Diamond from the Center for Devices and Radiological Health at FDA. And today I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning enabled medical devices, the work that we're doing to tailor a regulatory framework to encourage responsible innovation in AI ML. Here is an outline of my talk today. We'll start out with some information about digital health broadly and the CDRH Digital Health Center of Excellence where I work. Then we'll go on and talk a bit specifically about artificial intelligence and machine learning based medical devices. And then I'd like to tell you about an exciting initiative that we launched this year at the FDA, an action plan specifically for artificial intelligence and machine learning based medical devices. First, I'd like to share a little bit about what we do at CDRH, where we oversee the broad spectrum of medical devices, including software and artificial intelligence and machine learning based software. That is the focus of our talk today. At CDRH, patients come first, and our vision is that patients in the US have access to high quality, safe and effective medical devices of public health importance first in the world. Within the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, we launched about a year ago the Digital Health Center of Excellence, and our focus at the center is on empowering digital health stakeholders to advance healthcare. Let's talk a little bit about digital health, which is a very broad and impactful area in healthcare and medicine specifically. It covers a broad spectrum, shown here on the left, healthy living, and moving to the right, including prevention, diagnosis, treatment, rehabilitation, and home care. It represents the convergence of technology, data, and computing power for healthcare and related uses, and that's across the lifespan of an individual or a patient. Now, at CDRH, our focus is on digital health technology that are used as medical devices to treat, prevent, cure, or diagnose a condition or disease. But I also want to acknowledge that digital health technologies can be used for many purposes. They can not only be used as medical devices, they can be used to study medical products, to develop medical products, and we're interested in these applications as well. What we have seen is an evolving digital health world from what you see here on the left, a traditional device world where many of our regulations were developed for. And on the right, what we see today, an evolving digital health device world. So whereas traditionally for medical devices, the product development timeline had been months to years with less frequent modifications. Today, especially with the world of software, the development timeline is closer to weeks or months, and there is potentially frequent modifications and updates that manufacturers can make to their products. Whereas in the traditional device world, there was relatively limited availability of post-market data. In other words, data on the functioning of devices after they have been authorized for marketing. But today, when devices are connected, there's a potential for a lot of data and really rich information about how devices are being used in the real world. And in terms of volume, in a traditional device world, there were relatively stable number of submissions over time, but we really see the potential for exponential growth of a medical device software, and specifically, especially machine learning based devices. Shown here is an example for a particular field, and this is for behavioral health, of the broad spectrum of applications of digital health technologies. So for behavioral health, we see not only diagnostic products, but we also see digital therapeutic products. And this is spans the spectrum from health and wellness, and as well as to more acute disease and disorders. And in the context of an evolving digital health world that spans a broad spectrum of applications, as we've discussed, there's the potential for continuous learning for medical device software that is shown in this figure, which is taken from the work of the International Medical Device Regulators Forum, or IMDRF, a collaborative body that FDA actively participates in. And this work was focused on medical device software. And I'll walk you through this, this diagram, starting on the upper left, about 10 or 11 o'clock on that circle. If you have what is called here a software as a medical device definition statement, which largely represents the intended use of a product, as you go around the circle clockwise, and that software device enters the market, you have the potential, as I mentioned, for post-market monitoring, including feedback and other information on how the device is used in the real world. That data can be collected and analyzed as we make our way around the circle towards 6 o'clock, with new evidence, new clinical evidence being generated, and the potential for improving the performance and increasing the functionality of these products. So software development is an iterative process, and medical device software has the opportunity to take advantage of this iterative cycle to hone and improve its performance. And this type of development is something that we would like to encourage and facilitate at the agency. At the CDRH Digital Health Center of Excellence, our goals are to connect and build partnerships to accelerate advancement in digital health, to promote knowledge sharing, to improve best practices, and overall the quality, safety, and effectiveness of medical devices, and also to innovate regulatory approaches to provide efficient and least burdensome ways for software to be safe and effective, and to make sure that patients have access to those advanced technologies. At the Center of Excellence, we focus on a number of different areas that you see here on the right side of this slide. And today, as I mentioned, I'm going to focus on a subset of medical device software which utilizes artificial intelligence and machine learning being essentially a subset of artificial intelligence. So we're going to move on to the second part of the talk here, where we're focused on artificial intelligence and machine learning-based devices. The first thing I'd like to do here is to show two examples of artificial intelligence and machine learning-based software. And these are two examples that we have recently authorized for marketing in the United States. On the top is a Caption Health product. And what this device does is it actually guides a non-expert healthcare practitioner user in obtaining echocardiograms that they would not otherwise be able to obtain. And on the bottom, I'm showing the IDXDR device, which is a device that allows patients to be screened for certain types of diabetic retinopathy in a primary care setting, also where they would not otherwise have access to that screening. And this allows patients to get to the right specialist at the right time to receive the care that they need. We've seen in this public health emergency how important it is to be able to provide care remotely, and sometimes in settings where otherwise there might not be the right expertise. These devices and digital health technologies in general have a very strong potential and play a really important role in allowing information to be gathered from patients in settings where otherwise they wouldn't have access to it. There are many opportunities, and I've already shown you a few examples of how machine learning essentially has the potential to transform the delivery of healthcare. This can include earlier disease detection, more accurate diagnoses, the potential for new insights into human physiology, and personalized diagnostics and therapeutics. And we are seeing these devices and these technologies used across all medical fields. One of the greatest strengths of machine learning based devices is its ability to learn from the wealth of real-world data and improve the performance over time, as I mentioned earlier with that iterative circular development cycle. Now, along with these opportunities come some challenges as well, and I've listed some of them here. First, you need often large and well-curated data sets to develop the models that these machine learning devices use. And it's a challenge to obtain the appropriate data sets with the right level of diversity and the right clinical labels. Now, also many of these devices are more opaque in their function than other devices, and the explainability of machine learning products is a challenge as well. It's also important to identify and minimize any potential bias. And this is a challenge for any device, but it's an important challenge for machine learning-based devices. It's a regulatory challenge to provide oversight for a system that is evolving. And this is one of the areas of our focus as we develop a regulatory approach that we hope can facilitate the innovation in this area. And lastly, I've listed here the crucial importance of ensuring transparency to users of these devices, whether they are patients, caregivers, or providers, so that the users understand how the device is supposed to be used and any other important information that they would need to use it safely and effectively. So, in light of these opportunities and unique considerations, we've been working at CDRH, and I've shown here some recent milestones in the area of AI/ML based medical devices. In 2019, we published a discussion paper on a proposed regulatory approach, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We joined soon after that our first collaborative community related to artificial intelligence and machine learning, and since then we've joined numerous others. We held a public workshop on the evolving role of AI in radiological imaging. That was in early 2020. Last fall, we held a patient engagement advisory committee meeting, or the PEAK meeting, and that was focused on patient trust in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And that's where we hear from a committee of patients, and it's really an incredibly valuable opportunity to understand the patient perspective in that context. And then in the early part of this year, we published the AI/ML medical device software action plan. And I'm going to spend a good amount of time today talking about that in detail. But it's our multidisciplinary strategic approach to continue to develop and promote the safe development and use of these products. So I'm going to talk in more detail about the proposed regulatory framework that we wrote about in our discussion paper from 2019, shown on the left. And you see here a figure on the right that shows our proposed total product lifecycle based approach to machine learning based devices. And you see that superimposed on an AI/ML workflow that shows not only the development, but also the use of these devices. And what I want you to note especially is the circular and iterative nature of the development and of the life cycle of the product, and how this resembles that circular and iterative development approach that we discussed earlier about medical device software in general. So in the upper part of this figure, in that wide shaded rectangular region, that represents a development environment where the model that powers the device is trained and essentially developed from the data set. And that's labeled number one. And then as we follow the white and green arrows down toward the bottom of the figure, that's the deployment of the model to be used as a device in the real world. And there, data are inputted into the model, and the output is then monitored and fed back into the development environment, so that eventually that model can be improved. And so the numbers on this figure are our areas of oversight that we've proposed as part of this model, where number one, in the development of the model, we're really looking for the application of what we call good machine learning practices, or GMLP. Numbers 2 and 3 represent our review of the product before we authorize it for marketing. And number 4 is the real world performance monitoring. Again, how is the product really doing in the real world? And since publishing this paper and the proposed framework in April of 2019, we've received a lot of stakeholder feedback. We actually asked about 18 questions in that paper, and we received about 1,000 comments on our public docket from a diverse community of stakeholders The paper was published in more than 30 publications in peer-reviewed journals. And as I mentioned, we held a public workshop and an advisory committee meeting to gather more input and feedback from the public. And in addition to that, we held a lot of meetings with manufacturers who were interested in sharing with us ideas about how they developed their machine learning tools and how they could apply this development model. I've summarized here some of the feedback that we received from stakeholders, and I'll go through that at a high level here. First of all, in terms of the regulatory framework, it was generally positively received, and we requested further development of that framework for machine learning-based software. Number two, there was general support of the idea of good machine learning practices and a call for FDA to support the harmonization of those efforts to identify those good machine learning practices. Number three, related to transparency, there was a request for further discussion with FDA on specifically how do these technologies interact with people, and how can we improve and support transparency to those users. Fourthly, in terms of regulatory science, we received input about the need for improved methods, especially related to algorithmic bias and robustness to support the development of safe and effective medical devices. And fifth, in terms of real-world performance, stakeholders asked us for more clarity on what real-world performance monitoring would look like for AI/ML-based software. And what I'm showing here on the right are the highlights from our AI/ML action plan. And each of these areas of focus, each of these aims or goals of the action plan come directly from one of the important areas of stakeholder feedback that I just mentioned. So within our action plan, and we'll go into more detail about each of these, but just to highlight them here, we said that we would update the proposed regulatory framework, including through guidance. We would strengthen FDA's role in harmonizing good machine learning practices. We were devoted to fostering a patient-centered approach, and we would start with a workshop on transparency to users, which is actually being held next month. And we would support the development of regulatory science methods, particularly related to bias and robustness, as I mentioned. And also we would advance real-world performance pilots, and we would do this in coordination with stakeholders and other programs. And what I'm going to do next is to go through each of these areas of the action plan. So let's go into more detail about our AI/ML action plan. And we'll start with the first aim, fostering a patient-centered approach, incorporating transparency to users. I just want to highlight that, and we've discussed some of this, these products have unique considerations. They necessitate a proactive patient-centered approach. It's one that takes into account issues like usability, equity, trust, accountability, and one that promotes transparency to users and to patients more broadly. As I mentioned, we received a lot of input from stakeholders, including patients, and we learned a lot from our patient engagement advisory committee meeting. And we're really excited next month to be holding a workshop on transparency of AI/ML devices. I've included here a link to our workshop on the transparency of artificial intelligence and machine learning enabled medical devices, which will be held on October 14th. And it's open to the public, and we would love your participation and input and feedback on the event. So let's move on to the next area of focus for the action plan, which is good machine learning practices, or GMLP. GMLP are essentially accepted practices in machine learning, algorithm design, development, training, and testing that facilitate quality development and assessment of machine learning-based algorithms. It's based on concepts from quality systems, software reliability, machine learning, and data science and analysis. And what I've listed here is some of the efforts related to GMLP that the agency is actively participating in. I've listed at the top here some of the standards organizations where we participate through liaisons in support of this work. IEEE, ISO IEC, and Aiml BSI. Additionally, we're really very grateful to be able to join collaborative communities where broad range of stakeholders come together. And so we're there as well as patient groups and physicians and other healthcare providers and industry to talk about specific areas. There is a collaborative community through Xavier that is focused on AI. I've listed here also a collaborative community on ophthalmic imaging, where there are a lot of machine learning, artificial intelligence applications, and I mentioned one of them earlier, that IDXDR device. And then also a pathology innovation collaborative community, where again, there are many areas of application for machine learning technology. And we've actually joined a number of other collaborative communities as well with interest and a focus related to machine learning. Lastly, I'd shown a slide earlier from the International Medical Device Regulators Forum. The IMDRF has been working on a paper focused on terms and definitions to help everyone use a common and clear language for machine learning-based devices. And we've been actively participating in this AI medical device working group. So the next area of focus for the action plan is on updating the proposed AIML regulatory framework. And what you see here on the figure on the right highlighted is that number 2 and 3, that area of pre-market review, where the FDA reviews applications for marketing their products after they've been developed and before they're deployed in the real world. And an important part of this model is what we described as a change control plan for machine learning-based software that includes a proactive statement from a manufacturer about the changes or modifications that they intend to make to their products through training on new data, part of that iterative cycle. And we called that the software pre-specifications. And hand in hand with that information is information from the manufacturer on how exactly they will accomplish those changes. What are the methods that they'll use that will allow the product to learn from new data and change while remaining safe and effective. So we described this model in the discussion paper, and we've been working to develop a guidance, and this would be a draft guidance for input from the public on how a manufacturer would submit this type of proactive change control plan for their machine learning product to support its iterative development. So our goal in a tailored regulatory framework for artificial intelligence and machine learning based software devices is number 1, to enhance patient access to these products, to ensure that they are safe and effective, and to enable manufacturers to make changes and improvements to their products while avoiding unnecessary additional submissions. Now, we're up to the 4th aim of the action plan, which is related to real-world performance. Shown here on the figure, I've highlighted the area labeled number 4 on the lower right, which is related to that information from the real-world use of products being utilized and fed back into the development cycle, eventually with the goal of improving those products. We hope that by gathering data on the real-world use, we'll not only understand how the products are being used, but we'll also be able to proactively respond to any safety or usability concerns. We received a number of questions on real-world performance monitoring of these products, and we recognize that it will be a collaborative process to develop together and to understand best practices in real-world performance monitoring of these products. I've listed some of the questions here because I think that they are really important. And first of all, what type of reference data are appropriate to utilize in measuring the performance of machine learning software devices in the field? How much of the oversight should be performed by each stakeholder? How much data should be provided to the agency and how often? How can the algorithms, models, and claims be validated and tested? And how can feedback from end users be incorporated into the training and evaluation of artificial intelligence and machine learning-based software? So the actions that we intend to take in this area to advance the real-world performance is by supporting pilots of real-world performance monitoring, working with stakeholders on a voluntary basis, coordinating with other ongoing FDA programs focused on the use of real-world data. We'll use these collaborations and these pilots to develop a framework for seamless gathering, validation, and evaluation of relevant real-world performance metrics. So for all these efforts, continued stakeholder and public engagement will be crucial. We're interested in your input, and this is an important area. And I think it's a really unique opportunity for digital health products and machine learning products in particular to understand how products work in the real world. The fifth and last aim in the action plan is related to regulatory science methods. We acknowledge that there is a need for improved methods for evaluation and also for the development of machine learning algorithms. This includes methods related to the identification and minimization of bias and on the robustness and resilience of algorithms, especially to changing clinical inputs and conditions in general. And listed here are some of the efforts that we've undertaken in this area to support the development of regulatory science methods. We have ongoing research being conducted in collaboration with our CERSI centers, the Centers for Excellence in Regulatory Science and Innovation. Listed two of them here where we have active collaborations related to machine learning-based devices, both at UCSF Stanford and also at Johns Hopkins. And these collaborations complement the ongoing research efforts that are being performed intramurally within our own Office of Science and Engineering Laboratories, or OSIL, at the Device Center. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on machine learning and artificial intelligence-based medical device software, including our FDA AIML action plan. The 5 aims or pillars of the action plan are listed down here at the bottom of this slide. And I hope that I've expressed how our approach has been informed not only by the work that we've done in this area, but by a feedback from a broad array of stakeholders now over numerous years through the many papers and workshops and events that we have held. And I hope that you'll be able to join us next month at the workshop related to transparency. And we're very interested in your input and feedback on any of these areas and in general. So I've listed here some contact information, and again, really appreciate any questions or feedback. It was a pleasure to give this talk, and really, again, appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective and what we're doing at the agency in this area.
Thank you, Dr. Diamond, for that great presentation. We look forward to having you back again as advancements are made in the use of AI and machine learning in the healthcare field. We appreciate your time today and for your service to America in the U.S. Civil Service.